Hello, everyone. So, over the past few years, AI has really changed how we approach a lot of things with work. The first step of almost any task now starts with the convenience of generative AI curating a starting point for us, like a first draft that gives us a rough idea of what we can do next. It has become a companion for how we approach work. So I want to bring some of that same lens to accessibility and to the web experience itself. What does a future look like where AI is a companion for end users? Like what does it mean when AI is integrated directly into the user experiences and interfaces? I'm Sai Ram, the accessibility subject matter expert at Wally. I'm joined today by some amazing folks. Donna Bangard, the Director of Accessibility at Indeed, Ricky Onsman, the Principal Technical Writer at Vispero, Seema Shariat, the Senior Product Manager at BetterUp, and Bailey Swenson, the Senior Developer at BetterUp. Shall we quickly go around the room and share with the group like what each of you do in your role and how exactly it ties into accessibility? Um, Bailey, if you want to start.
Like Sai said, my name is Bailey Swenson. I'm a front-end engineer over at BetterUp, and I've been there for about 5 years. So a lot of my excitement within front-end engineering is around accessibility. So I've been helping to lead some of the accessibility remediation and just general workflows over at BetterUp to kind of help us become more accessible and truly be, better up for all.
My name's Ricky Onsman. I'm Principal Technical Writer at Vispero, which is a group of 4 companies, one of which is TPGI, used to be the Pacello Group, where I work. That's a digital accessibility consultancy. We work with large corporate clients around the world, and I basically write the guidance and the rules for our automated and manual testing procedures, and answer the difficult questions when people have trouble remediating particular issues.
I'm the director of accessibility over at Indeed. I am housed in the marketing department. I get to work with our digital experiences, some of our print experiences, our hosted events, and work on content where we bring in partners and subject matter experts throughout various job seekers facing barriers, of course, including the disability community, to try to empower them, educate employers, and really bring the great message.
My name is Seema. I am a product manager at BetterUp. Prior to being a product manager for 7 years at BetterUp, I was a front-end engineer, focused highly on accessibility. So Bailey and I worked alongside each other for a very long time. And yeah, I'm just really excited for this conversation to get going and to learn from all of you.
Yeah, thank you. Like, I cannot express enough. Like, all of you have such a wealth of experience when it comes to, accessibility, ensuring digital experiences, and are incredibly vocal about accessibility as a whole, which I personally find inspiring just because I've only been in this field for like 7 years or so now. So I'm incredibly excited to get to discuss this with you all. So let's get started. So earlier, I mentioned how AI gives us a starting point for approaching everyday tasks, at work. And I'm curious about your thoughts on what AI could offer a user when they go to a website, instead of browsing through a site traditionally. What if the interface offers a more curated set of likely next steps based on intent? Donna, you worked in design, you worked in front-end development. What are your thoughts on this type of intent-based navigation, and what would you insist stays stable and predictable in such an experience?
Well, yeah, I was a front-end developer designer for many years. And one of the things I always wanted to make sure is that people always felt familiar when they came back to the experience. And nothing was surprising in a negative way. And with that intent base, it's always going to really come through of where are we talking about the user's intent, or are the designers really more concerned about the business's intent? And it's going to come down to kind of that meeting in the middle where you understand what the user is hoping to get, and you can still bring them down that journey that you're hoping to get them down to. So with that piece, it's really understanding the different users and not only what their intents are, but the different ways they perceive information, the way they interact, whether it be through assistive technologies, whether they process information differently, or if you're thinking about, if you're something that somebody's going to go to maybe in the evenings after dinner, and you're targeting a group that's likely to have um, caretaking responsibilities. Are you going to be able to help them cut through some of the noise and really target in on what they're doing? So it's understanding those needs beyond what they're looking to get from you. That's going to help that intent drive forward, I believe. But I'm curious what the other panelists have to say too.
I definitely agree with what Donna said so beautifully. I think with AI, the intent is a lot more tied and woven into what we can personalize on the fly. And that comes with caveats as well. So I can, use voice to text to say, say I have low visibility, low eyesight. Take me to this website and take me to the third tab. I want to see the recipe for apple pie or something. In doing that, what we need to, I think, a part of our responsibility as a specialist in accessibility and in AI as well is to ensure that we don't break the DOM structure. Basically we don't break the assistive technology that most users rely on, because I might want to start using my keyboard, halfway through to like tab through ingredients or something. Want to make sure that there are ways that we're not creating like a two-tier system like we see with the old ways before AI. There's like a regular website, and then there's like the the accessibility version. And which one do you think is more beautiful and more useful? And we always want to create the same experience, and so that we, regardless of what your disability is, cognitive, I can list them, they go on and on. We're not creating an ableist space, because we won't want to make the same mistakes as we did in the past. And so another part of I think our responsibility is training these systems, these LLMs, to understand what's truly compliant and what truly works. Because as we know, LLMs have been trained on misinformation in the past too. So we have this kind of like responsibility as a people who care, like the empathetic, the empath inside of us, who cares about like making sure that the world isn't ableist, to make sure that we teach and train these. We use these models the right way, and we tell them when they're wrong or right. I hope that answered, built on what Donna was talking about intent, and didn't stray too far away. But
No, you didn't. You also brought up something about the DOM changes, which we will come around to later on. But meanwhile, Ricky, your work in technical documentation and specification depends heavily on precision and predictability. Two things that accessibility also relies on deeply, and two areas that AI is nowhere close to at the moment. So first of all, like, what do you think of this type of like intent-based navigation? And secondly, if AI starts choosing the next best step for a user, how does that change the way we write and document that experience, how we approach it?
Great question. I think one of the things that there is huge potential for AI to personalize web experiences. What we need to do at this point is kind of start by comparing to what we've already got, which is basically either a browser-based experience or an app-like experience. And it's worth pointing out that only a few years ago, we were talking about the disappearance of the browser. everything would be app-based. And we're now using desktop apps to give that kind of the same experience that we have with mobile apps. So in a way, what we need to look at is what AI does to that experience. One of the things worth noting is that currently, for instance, browsers compensate for some of the poor markup that's used and some of the poor coding that's used. Now, if we let AI do the same thing, personalize experiences and compensate for poorly written, poorly constructed websites, we're not going to make the web a better place. We're just going to continue to do the same things that browsers do at the moment. So there's a level there where personalizing the experience is a very positive aim to achieve, but we have to have some caveats, as Seema put in place, where we look at, is this actually doing good? And how it affects the DOM is a big part of that. How it makes stuff available to assistive technologies. The questions will be whether that matters. If you have a screen reader built into AI, does it even matter then? Can you set your AI to act like a screen reader? I think the other thing to bear in mind with that is that we may be starting to overestimate what AI can actually do. If you take something like providing alternative text for an image, if you just ask AI to provide alternative text for an image, it will do what a lot of human beings do, which is tell you this is a picture of this. But that's not actually what we need to have happen. Alternative text is more than that. It needs to take the context of the page into account. And AI can do that, but it needs to be told to do that. So the AI needs to basically say not only what is in the picture, but why that picture is there at all. And it can be, but that means we need to train our artificial intelligence to do that. It's not going to do it by itself. So I see a lot of potential for it, but I see also some potential for negative sides to it.
Wow, that was like very succinctly put. That was amazing. You mentioned things about like caveats during the implementation and things we need to be aware of. And Bailey, as a developer, you're the one who ultimately has to make something like this real and keep it from breaking, right? So how do you build and test for an experience that can change based on user intent and AI output? Like that seems like a lot to just place on developers' shoulders at the moment.
That is the question, isn't it? I think especially as these UIs get more and more complex with the use of AI just integrated inside of it, it's going to be so hard to be able to test for all of these cases. So I know one of the things that myself as a front-end engineer, what I've been focused on is trying to move where we do accessibility further left in the pipeline. And so kind of going back to what Seema and Ricky were saying about making sure these models are better. We use Claude Code a lot within development, and so making sure that Claude is aware of accessibility and we're developing accessibility as we go. Of course, it's not going to be perfect, but I think the further left we push these things and making sure that accessibility is built into these components, no matter what, we're always going to have these pages with a basic structure, right? And I think we're going to have to go back to that a little bit of making sure the bones of the page are great. So semantic HTML, making sure the ARIA labels are great. I think that's where we're going to kind of see development kind of go towards as we try to implement AI more and more in these workspaces. And so, we move so fast within development, and I'm sure that's something that, we all see is we move so fast. And so how do we not necessarily have to slow down to incorporate accessibility, but use the AI to help really try to, I guess, do accessibility as we go in a way that, we might not fully trust it right now. We'll still have to really test it, but we'll get to the point where it's just kind of baked in. And I think there's a lot of places we can really grow with that.
Okay, so you said something about like the bones of the page are still going to be intact, and that's not going to change. But then, to be fair, like what if it could change? Because like Ricky said about we thought everything will be apps at some point, and like they're not. And what if like we do? And I'm curious how I am also curious how that's going to like come about eventually when all of this like develops and like improves more. I Does anyone have anything more to add to what Bailey and Ricky mentioned so far?
Yes, I'd like to add something there. I think Bailey really put a finger on one important part of it being baked in. And I think one of the things we can do is actually look at what we're already using AI for in a baked in way. So if you look at things like Google Translate, right? In 2016, Google Translate moved from a calculated algorithm to using its own form of AI. The accuracy of Google Translate overnight went up 80%. We now use Google Translate on a day-to-day basis. It's there in your pocket. You don't need a human translator. It hasn't replaced human translation, but it's there immediately available to you as a tool. And we have no trust issues with it. We trust Google Translate to do its job properly. We do the same things with creating plain language stuff. Grammarly, Hemingway, Hyperwrite's brilliantly titled Tell It To Me Like I'm a 5-year-old. They all use AI. And they do a very, very good job. The thing is that the AI that they use is not ChatGPT. It's an AI that is built for a specific purpose, that is working off a specific, what you might call a limited language model rather than a large language model. At Vispero, we built our own kind of knowledge-based assistant that does a similar thing. The first one we built was based on everything that's available on the web. And as have been pointed out, there's a lot of stuff on the web that is just plain wrong. And it's frankly, some of it is quite dangerous. And it's especially inaccessible. But what we then did was built a version of it that is based on every audit we ever did, every article we've ever written, every blog post, every Teams discussion we've had. And that turned out to be really good. So our engineers use that as in okay, I've got a problem here with how far the label is from the field when somebody zooms in. How am I going to fix this? You ask the knowledge base assistant and you're accessing how we fixed that problem in the past. And you might get 2 or 3 options. So it's not a set, this is the answer. It's more like, here is a set of possible answers depending on what you're working with. Now, if we can make AI fill that kind of function, that seems to me a really positive thing. And we can bake that in so that we can trust it and we don't even need to think about it terribly much.
Yeah, I think one of the things you're saying, Ricky, that's really important is that it comes down to how we're training the AIs we're using. And, some might be trained well enough to be, a thought partner on subject matter expertise, while others are very much like the intern who might send an email to the entire company. We've all seen those two extremes, and it comes down to how we're training them and are there trust and safety pieces built in beyond just the content you're putting in? Are there ways to make sure it doesn't learn the wrong things or inaccurate information or whatnot too? Or that it won't, try to give very human advice when it's really just trying to communicate content. So a lot of those trust and safety things have to be built in to make sure that it's not only presenting the right information, but it's presenting information in a way that can do no harm.
When we're talking about limited language models and like being able to train on our own proprietary data and being able to develop something much more accurate and predictable through that. We at Valley try to, we had a lot of audit data, automated audit data from the years of all the websites that we audited and fixed. And we trained our own AI model with it. And one of the tiny issues that we faced was when it comes to niche problems, niche accessibility issues, it only had 1 or 2 issues to go with. So it kept, it was okay, this is the problem, then this is the only solution that's there. And it became a basic if-else statement. And anytime we put something into the thing or a similar problem into the thing, we only got that specific output as a result. And that was something that we're still figuring out, how to make sure that we give a certain level of weightage to these things so that they don't like overtake the entire reasoning of the model in a way that it affects all the outputs for it. So yeah, that whole like where we place the trust and like how we rely on it and how we approach it when it comes to training these limited language models is so important. So yeah, thank you so much for raising that as a point. Seema, with all these concepts that we're talking about, you sit at the point where you turn all of these ideas, you look at the implementation part of it and the conceptual part of it, and you turn all of them into roadmaps and try to like look at things from a bigger perspective, right? But if you have to ship these types of AI curated intent layer, how do we decide what must be designed as a deterministic flow, like something that we need the user to intentionally go through versus what could be an AI assisted flow? Should there be a distinction between the two? What exactly would be the distinguishing factor there? How would you even determine it?
Great question. I do think that, well, one way, I guess it depends on the context, right? Are we onboarding a new user? Is there a one way, one path for them to go through? Maybe it should be deterministic. If we know a lot about the user or the member, maybe we can do more personalized, dynamic sort of walkthroughs with them and allow for inputs and changing using AI assistance. At the same time, like that's where we, that's where the balance comes back in, where we don't want to break the DOM, we don't want to break assistive technology. We do want to create an experience that works for everyone. I would love to turn that question back around to the group as well, because for the most part, like I've been working a lot with compliancy and security, and something that Donna brought up. And what we're talking about here, I think a lot of it sort of brings to mind this question. I think it's a larger question around like how is WCAG 2.3 and how are AI and like security compliance rules going to evolve because right now it's like the dawn of a new day, how are they going to evolve together? Because if there are no rules in place, are we the ones that are going to set those rules? Like who, so thinking about like in light of your question, I would turn it back on the rest of us and ask, say, what do you think is most important? I mean, if we know for a fact that there's no way we're going to break, let's say in an ideal world, there's no way we're going to break the document structure by being deterministic or allowing for personalization, then yeah, let's go for either way. You choose your own path. But we do know that there are rules that we should not break, and there will be more. And so I'm more concerned around the question of like, how do we foresee these compliance like standardizations changing and evolving as we move forward in the future? I mean, we're at the dawn, like we're at the very start of it, right? So I hate to turn the question into a different question, but I'm curious as what you guys think.
I'd like to add to that if I could. I think one of the steps we need to take, first of all, is when we're talking about AI, we're not talking about a single thing. We're talking about a lot of different tools, and many of which compete with each other. So ChatGPT versus Claude versus Gemini, and they have produced different results to the same questions, which is a really interesting thing because it means we can't say our AI produces the definitive answer because another one will produce its own definitive answer. The second part of that, I think, is distinguishing between automation and intelligence. AI does very, very well automation, goes incredibly quickly through a vast body of knowledge and comes up with an answer. Often, that answer is produced in a definitive tone that isn't really warranted. So it's one of the problems with AI at this stage is that it is overconfident and produces a result that says, this is the answer. And when you tell it, no, actually, that's not completely correct, it'll say, yes, you're right. That is not completely correct. Here is the correct answer. No, I'm sorry, you've still got that slightly wrong. I know. Now I'll tell you the real right answer. And, that's not acceptable. We can't work with that. The other side of it is that the progression from automation to intelligence is kind of scary. The automation side makes perfect sense and it feels controllable. The intelligence side gets a little bit, ooh, that's spooky. As an example, we on our blog posts, we were in the habit of using feature images that were kind of punny. So for an article about that was titled "Red Flags in HTML Markup," we had an image of 5 red flags. We asked Gemini, "What's that a picture of?" And said 5 red flags. Why is that picture there? Oh, it's there as a metaphor for the risks that are inherent in certain markup. And you go, you understand metaphor? Okay, that's interesting. And that's kind of like, hello, that's getting towards the intelligence part, not just the automation part. So, and that feels at the moment like it's a bit uncontrollable. You know what I mean? That it feels like you could use AI to customize a browser experience and leave the user in control so that everybody gets their personalized experience for themselves. But if it goes a step further and says, I've looked through all your data and what you want to see is this, rather than you getting to choose it, saying this is what you need to see, whether you know it or not. That's getting a little bit, okay, calm yourself down a bit, get back in control and let me be the driver, okay?
I, I think this is an opportunity though for the disability community to really show its leadership. The disability community has been working with augmented reality, sort of speak, for ages. You know, you don't, somebody who has a seeing eye dog companion doesn't let the, dog bring them after a squirrel. They work with the dog in an augmented way to navigate a space, and then because that is a sentient being and not a computer, it will have its time to be a puppy on its own and happy, and all tail wagging goodness. Just as we've used screen readers and this and that, and now there's as you've said, the describing images and things of that nature. That augmentation, words hard, that augmentation has existed in one form or another throughout its assistive technology for a very long time. And because of that, I think that the disability community is uniquely positioned to help guide where some of these, okay, it understands metaphor, and that's going to be really helpful for somebody who potentially has, whether it be a disability related or a cultural difference or some other part that they may not understand that metaphor in context. That's going to be a huge asset, but it's not going to be trying to tell them what to do next because of that. It can present options, but it doesn't have to prescribe. And I think that as long as we have that options, as long as we have that human piece accounted for in that process, it will move forward. And then that's where I think disability leadership can really thrive in this augmented future.
Great point.
Even outside of disability leadership, I feel like it needs to be the accessibility community that needs to like come up with guardrails and guidelines for these things. At least we must also be in the room when all of these discussions are happening, because I feel like otherwise a lot of important points that we are more likely to notice will never get addressed in situations like this in a grand scheme of AI governance and how we are going to approach all of this. I wanted to bring up with Ricky's point about AIs feeling overconfident about determining what it is the user wants and everything. I feel like with it getting baked into everything, it feels like some websites are in a rush to move users towards the end of a journey. Ideally, that is what we want as developers and designers and product managers. Like we want like we believe that the user is here because they want to be there and they want to do something through our site or whatever. So we want them to get to the end of that thing without any hassle, and it being and we want it to be a seamless experience. But sometimes it feels like, hey, welcome to our site. Here's what we think you want. Here are a few other nudges, and let's get you to check out immediately. That type of thing, and it's very convenience economy core, and because we do want things done instantly. But do you think this can reduce agency for people who rely on assistive technologies? It becomes more of a funnel rather than a space that we can freely navigate on our own. How do we design disclosures and navigation so the user understands the full set of available paths, not just suggested ones?
I think one of the things there is that, as Donna has said, that people with disabilities seeking accessible experiences present the vanguard of this kind of stuff. This is where we really will test AI properly. And some of it comes down to things like AI left to itself will aim for universal design, things that are usable by everybody without any need for customization or adaptation. But what users often need is an inclusive design approach where they can customize their own experience to meet their particular needs. It doesn't just apply to digital accessibility, it applies to accessibility in general. Um, but that on that front, what you need is an AI that not only understands your situation and comes up with an approach that suits it, but allows you to customize that as you go. So it is a tool that you use, not a tool that uses you. That actually takes a big shift in thinking because we haven't successfully done that anywhere, and digital accessibility, AI powered, offers an opportunity to do that where we haven't really done that before, um, ableism was mentioned earlier, and one of the basic principles of ableism is that people with disabilities need to be fixed. AI offers us the opportunity to say, no, we just need a tool to help us experience the world the way we want to experience it. So there's massive potential there, and I do think we need to have guardrails in place. But many of those can be defined by the individual. So you customize your own AI that does what you want it to do. Does that make sense?
Yes. You got me thinking about beyond, when you mentioned beyond web accessibility, something I've been personally interested in my whole entire life is like robotics, which ties a lot into AI. I was just imagining a world maybe 2 months from now, maybe a year from now, where anyone, regardless of what your disability is, I mean, most of us have a disability, whether cognitive or not, you know. Imagine we all have our companion robot that could do that work for us, deal with the web for us. I mean, I'm thinking about, Stephen Hawking and how he used his eyes to navigate when he was suffering, to navigate it, to speak actually, and like to go on websites. I don't know how he navigated, but just eye tracking technology. And it's just, I mean, technology in general. I mean, how beautiful would it be to live in a world where a companion robot could do things for you that you were capable of, or
Need assistance with.
yeah, like I think that's beautiful. It's a beautiful way of looking at it. So as long as we train them the right way, right, not to turn on us and to navigate the website the way we want it to, or do pick up papers or whatever it is. I mean, I follow a lot of people on LinkedIn who are very outspoken about like the things that have happened to them on airlines and so forth that are just so ableist. But I want to be as optimistic as possible. It's like where if we have good intent, we advocate for these things. How long before we have that? Be a beautiful world to live in.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I think there is a thing there, though, that goes hand in hand with that, that AI, by definition, is based on large sets of data, including data about people. We need to be careful then, even with the most personalized of AI, that it doesn't share that data with people we don't want it to share it with. So we need strong privacy built into personalized AI that don't tell the government what websites you've been browsing. You know, um, And that is going to be tricky. That is going to be difficult because AI, almost by its nature, will want to do what it thinks is good for you. And if that means sharing your medical history with a government department, then it will do that. And that presents real risks, especially for people with disabilities.
There's a book called Co-Intelligence, and one of the themes that I came away from reading it with was that you always have to keep in mind AI wants to make you happy. It doesn't need to be right. And that is one of those pieces where, you do need that training, those trust and safety teams, that checking how it's learning, what it's learning. We're talking about how it's learning large things about what disabilities, what anybody body is, but every body is different. How we act, how we perceive, disabled or not. And AI is assistive technology for people who might not be disabled. That's all it is. It's another assistive tech. Whether you're disabled or not, if you're using it to edit your work or to help you write code or whatever, you're using an assistive technology to help you augment your reality to go to the next stage in that process. So it really comes back down to what are the guardrails? What is it being taught? By whom? Why are they teaching it that?
Mm-hmm.
Like with any data out there, you not only have to look at, who wrote the report, but why and what point were they trying to make with that data. So, because it changes how people ask questions and all of that kind of stuff. That same nuance of data research is applied to these training of these models.
Mm-hmm.
So when we're thinking about this, we have to realize that there's a lot of ableist as well as other biased content on the web. And if it's learning from that, we've already seen it reflected in AI models that companies have had to take down or
Yeah.
temporarily turn off or whatnot. We're already seeing that. And we're seeing how this can, if gone, unchecked. So we really have to, it's easy to get comfortable in it.
Yeah.
And we have to take the accountability and responsibility to stay vigilant of asking questions, both as the people who create the technology and as users of that technology. And yeah, and I'm saying that technology, we're acknowledging, yes, Ricky, it's a huge pile of stuff that is AI.
Donna, I think you beautifully said, I think you have a new tagline now. AI is assistive technology. So, and it's simply put, but it makes sense. I didn't like mind blown moment. I like that.
Cool.
I also wanted to bring up this during the alt text image recognition conversation. One of the primary use cases for AI in accessibility so far, at least, has been media recognition, recognizing the content of images and videos or audio and transcribing them. And sure, we did discuss how like sometimes it's very dodgy and not reliable. But if AI can generate accurate alt text from context, do we stop writing alt text altogether? How much effort should we put into it once we reach like that type of stage? If not, what's the new bar? Like where else should teams put their effort instead into if we don't have to focus on this anymore?
I think that cuts to kind of where we started this conversation, talking about browsers and semantic HTML. I don't think we should stop providing alternative text. We should just make sure that the alternative text is correct and appropriate, and give AI the opportunity to read that. The temptation will be to say, if there's no alternative text, then let AI provide it. But I think that is the second best option. The best option is to have the alternative text provided, whether that's in a robotic, automated way or a human way, And I've got to say, this is one of the issues we have currently with alternative text, is that the alternative text written by humans is not always terribly good. And this is an issue with who creates the alternative text. If it's left to somebody who doesn't work with words for a living, then the result isn't going to be terribly good. Yeah. And that's a limitation of how we construct websites and apps, that it has to be a collaborative process between designers, developers, and content authors. And that's going to be reflected in how AI interprets that kind of stuff. The functionality, the visual design, and then the meaning of the content. And AI has to kind of put all that together somehow and compensate for when it is inefficiently done. That's a big ask. And I think it is something that we can build over time, but it will take time, and there will be kind of, no, that didn't work. Okay, go back to square one. Let's try it again. And there's going to be a lot of that going. But as I think we all agree that digital accessibility is a fantastic sandbox for that. If you can get it right for people with disabilities accessing digital content, then you've really got a workable model.
I just realized as you were talking that at some point, someone higher up is going to say, okay, we do need to review all these AI generated alt text or whatever, so we'll let a different AI review that, and that's becoming an endless.
Oh, undoubtedly. Absolutely. That is going to happen.
Oh God, the horror. Bailey, were you about to say something?
Absolutely. I mean, just listening to what you were saying, Ricky, it's like, for sure. I think, eventually the model will get to the point where maybe we don't really need to care about these small things. I say care very lightly, just more like the AI might be able to fill that in. I think for now, we're not really at that stage yet, but I think a lot of our efforts, I'd say as developers, kind of once we start to reach that point, is going to be more around making sure the structure is good. Especially with some of these AI flows, I feel like things might potentially get more complex at a developer level, right? So these might be things where maybe we need to start thinking about live regions and focus traps and things that aren't, not that they're super, super, super complex, but we might need to start thinking more strategically around how these things work. And that might be where more of our time lies, is in trying to create these dynamic solutions that, if you look at it from a user perspective, seamless. It's like magic, right? But I think from a developer perspective, we're going to be really trying to have to focus in and create these dynamic kind of solutions that are still really accessible. And I think that's going to be kind of a huge challenge once we start to go down that road. And that's where I could kind of see where most of that focus might go. And we might leave like the AI to generate the alt tags and we just quickly check them, or we have another AI come in and check them, right? But I think like that's probably where a lot of this development might kind of evolve.
I think that's a very good point. Someone made the phrase to me the other day, artificial intelligence is fine, but what I'm waiting for is artificial wisdom. That's not just knowing stuff, but knowing how to do it right. And I think front-end development is a perfect example of that. There's so many front-end devs coming out and they're working with a React framework that has the potential to be accessible, but it doesn't have accessibility built in. So they ask AI, what ARIA labels should I approach here and should I use here to make this accessible? What I want is the wisdom of an artificial intelligence that says, well, you could use these ARIA labels, but why not use semantic HTML in the first place? And when we get to that point, we will have something that combines intelligence and wisdom.
So I cannot believe we're at the last 10 minutes of this call. I feel like there's like so many other things that I wanted to talk about here. So far, a lot of what we've discussed has come from the angle of like what happens if AI breaks something, and I want to look at it in a more optimistic lens. At least this hypothetical of like what if AI can genuinely improve the experience by offering insight the user wouldn't otherwise get? Do we then have a responsibility to use that insight to help the user, even if it complicates the accessibility implementation? Take a job listing site, for example. A user might be navigating through like hundreds of relevant roles, but What if based on their behavior, you know that the job in like the 21st position is most likely the best match for them? Would you be open to dynamically reordering the list so that they encounter the role next, or even maybe moving the focus directly to it? Like if you do that, how would that how should that change be communicated to someone using a screen reader? You know, what context do they need to understand why something changed, and what just happened, and like what their options are? Like how do you ease a user through that moment without disorienting them, or like taking control and agency away from them?
Well, in the job scenario, for example, Indeed, oh, our what we do is we match skills that the human enters and match it with the skills required for roles, and then find matching opportunities. So the human is a partner in this. It is being partnered. It is not that the AI is reorganizing it for you. Like that's a partnership. What you're describing is I go looking to buy, oh my gosh, shoes. I don't ever buy shoes online, but let's pretend I'm breaking my own rule. I'm buying shoes online. And it instead, it knows, age, height, weight. Oh, you really shouldn't wear high heels that high. Well, maybe I want to be that tall. But, I'm 5'5". Maybe I want to be, 5'9". I would not function in that 4-inch heels for the record. But my point is, it deciding what height I should be when wearing shoes would be a negative. But if I'm saying, hi, I've had some mobility barriers in the past, it's icy out, what do you think I should do? If then it says, well, honey, let's go with the flats, then I'd be okay with that because it's telling me based on what I'm giving it. It's not prescribing it to me based on what it figured out.
I want all AI to call me honey.
I know, right? I should actually go through and see if I can teach some of my AIs if that's my name.
I think like the recruitment industry is a real kind of threshold for a lot of this stuff. And I know Indeed does it very well, and there are recruitment agencies that do it very well. There are also recruiters who use AI in a way that excludes people with disabilities, like
Yeah.
point blank. And that's something that we have to be very, very careful about. I mean, it cuts to that by default ableist nature that AI is really reflecting our society. It's not like AI came up with these ableist policies. It's reflecting what we already have. But we need to find a way to make sure that it does the opposite, that it allows for people to be judged on their merits, and that having a disability does not exclude somebody from a job where that disability is irrelevant. So, and I'm sure you run into this all the time, Donna.
Yeah, yeah, we've done a lot of work at Indeed, but I have seen it elsewhere. And you see, I one time was looking around at job descriptions and I was looking on other sites to compare. And I found a job description on, I won't say what site it was, but another site. And the requirements were standing for long periods of time, sitting for long periods of time, lifting X amount. Basically, it said every physical opportunity, reading out loud, like it said every physical thing to exclude anybody with a disability. So like anybody with a disability would read that and go, oh, you don't want me there. And and that was just in the job description. And for all we know, that hiring manager had found a template from 8 years ago in a Google Drive and said, oh, I'll just use this, and never thought a thing about it. But
Yeah,
because it was historically, so humans make the same mistakes that the AI, there is a reason I'm saying that down this rabbit hole. Humans are making the same mistakes as the AIs. It's just that AI makes them faster and it makes it easier for us to make them repeatedly. So this is why I keep saying we just have to keep asking questions, both on both ends of the spectrum of, the what, the who, the why. Really think about it. And frankly, that's going to be where the future is when humans think enough about what we're getting to go, wait a minute, let me pause. Yes, I could get 30 things done with AI's help in the next 2 hours, or I could get 10 things done and really think through each one. And I think it's on us to have that regulation, which is so hard, but I think it's on
Yes,
us.
I think that's a really good point, and it cuts as well to something that is already starting to happen, and we need to be really careful about it, which is that rather than people who do a job and understand the ins and outs of the job and use AI to help them do that job, people who don't understand the job use AI in the belief that it can do the job for them. You know, recruitment is a good example where somebody in a company says, "I don't want to pay a recruitment agency. I'll just use AI." And we have the model, particularly with accessibility right in front of us, of overlays, where a company is seeking to avoid getting sued, thinks I'll just pay this overlay, AI powered overlay, to solve my problems for me much cheaper, and it does the job perfectly. And it's just totally misleading. And we're already getting a whole wave of new lawsuits of people who have used overlays, and it actually gets them sued. Right? So I think that that is a real risk of what you might call lay people using AI to do a job that they can't do themselves, but they don't want to hire somebody else to do. So they use AI to do it, and AI isn't terribly good at it.
I agree. I think a lot of people need to understand and learn how to become, like you said, the drivers of AI and not let it control you, but you control it. And Ricky, you were saying earlier, it's like having like access. You should be prompt literate. Know what you're asking for. Know what you don't know. Know enough to know what you don't know. Like I think getting trained up on the right way of prompt engineering. Don't rely on AI completely, but like how to use it in the right way for your
Yeah.
particular job. I think a lot of companies are asking now, like, feed us into the AI world. A lot of companies are behind. And there's no fast way to it, right? You have to really, really like get into the depths and like take a learning lesson and really commit yourself to it because otherwise it'll control you and you won't control it, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's important to know that it's like any other technology that's brand new, and yes, AI moves faster, and that's why I think all of us are going, okay, let's have these conversations because it's happening. But you don't want an 8-year-old child behind the wheel of a car. You don't want somebody who's not understanding how to use any technology to have it. How many people have ever seen, somebody run over to a toddler and get something out of their hands real quick? It's there's things that are tools and there are things that should not be used without education. And the challenge is actually back to access, but it's because we all have access as this is being developed, as this is happening, and all the changes are happening so quickly. Um, and I think it's one of those times where we have to kind of give ourselves and each other grace because we are human beings and we are a society trying to adapt at the speed of computing, but at the same time also just again I guess it keeps coming down to asking questions and maybe even training the AI to prompt us to ask questions better.
Could not have ended on a better note. Just want to ask, is there anything, can you think of any other ways that AI might change the lived experience of end users, especially people with disabilities? Anything that we did not discuss so far? Does anyone have anything?
I guess I would add a note that this year is the 100th anniversary of television. And a lot of the things that are being said about AI now were said 100 years ago. It's uncontrollable, it's wild technology, it'll ruin our society. It'll destroy human culture. And 100 years later, I mean, television, you know. So I think that we can overestimate, we shouldn't underestimate the damage it can do, but we also shouldn't overestimate the damage it will do. And it's up to us to make sure that we control it, as Donna said. Um, but we do have models of new technology and how they've affected us, and it doesn't have to be a doomsday scenario.
I love that. I think just one quick note too, like we're going to have to be extremely transparent as we move forward with some of these implementations and changes to our own websites. Like whatever we take home today, I think we need to, use AI in a way that is empathetic. We're caring for all of our users. We're doing things in a very intentional way. I think there's the drive to, make everything shiny and use AI for everything, right? And I think we need to make sure that we're doing it for the right reasons. And I think we need to let users know why we're doing what we're doing and how it's going to help them while still giving them control. And I think that's something that we really need to take forward as we continue to move faster and further into the world of AI, right? I think the companies that do things in the most trustworthy way are going to be the ones that kind of come out on top, right?
Well put.
Yeah, that's honestly solid ending. All of you stuck the landing on that one. Thank you so much, everyone, for being part of this roundtable. It was incredibly insightful, and I really enjoyed getting to speak with you all about it. Thank you.
Great conversation. And I'm definitely going to steal AI is assistive technology.
Wonderful. Yes, we should put that everywhere.
Absolutely.
Thank you
It's a sticker.
Right on the backside, yes.
For sure.